Are we live? Yes, we are. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today, for taking the time to come and join me today at the Mastering Remote Work in 2025 webinar series. Today is day one. We will be looking at whether or not you're ready to go remote with your team and what you should know before making the switch. My name is Sofia. I am the founder of Roomth, a web-based virtual office platform for teams of all sizes, which I will also be introducing and talking a little bit about on the end of today's presentation. So who is today's presentation for exactly? It's for teams and managers who are looking into getting started on their remote work journey, but might still have some concerns, some lingering questions, some worries, some anxiety that hopefully I can help clear today. So shall we get started? First of all, let's have a look at today's agenda. In the beginning, we'll be trying to understand together what is exactly remote work or hybrid work. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of words that might be difficult for some to understand. We'll start with that, and then we will have a look at the benefits for everyone involved. We will also be looking at some common concerns and challenges and some success stories as well. After which I will be introducing a transition framework that you can use for you and your team. Some useful tools and features I will also be introducing. I will talk a little bit about my product, the Roomth solution, and after that we will have a brief Q&A session. So please feel free to ask any questions you might have at any point of this presentation. Just drop them in the chat or in the Q&A section of the platform. Let's get started. So it's almost 2025. It's currently November 2024. Are you confident in your understanding of remote work? There's a lot of words. There's flex, hybrid, fixed, office first, full remote. What is remote work anyway? Are you confident that you understand what it is? Let's start with that. So the best way in my opinion, the best way you can look at it is in a flexibility spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, on the most flexible side of the spectrum, you have remote work as a whole, but especially the fully remote model, which is remote in itself is employees performing duties outside of the traditional office environment. And then you have full remote, which is entirely, there is no office presence. So everyone is outside of the office all of the time. That is the most flexible part of the spectrum. A little bit towards the middle, we have hybrid, what we usually refer to as hybrid, which is a mixture of in-office work and remote work. It's a more flexible. It has some flexibility, but it still requires employees to come to an actual office. And then inside the hybrid model, we have hybrid flex, which is employees usually have the freedom to choose when and how often they come to the office and work from home, respectively. And then we have hybrid fixed, which usually managers or the organization itself has created a structured schedule. For example, at least 3 times a week, employees must come to the office. Or, for example, fixed on Mondays and Wednesdays is remote day. So there's a structure that the employees must follow. And then we have on the least flexible end of the spectrum, everybody's favorite, Elon Musk's favorite, fully on-site, fully in-office work model, which is, everybody's favorite. Cubicles, open floor plans, etc. it is the least flexible of all of them. So, what are exactly the benefits of a more flexible or remote model? For the employees, let's start with the benefits for the employees. We see four main benefits. We see people save time, people have a better work life balance, people also save money, and people are more healthy. Their actual quality of life increases. Time savings, as in that people don't have to wake up so early anymore. They don't have to take into account traffic or weather conditions in order to reach the office on time. So that time that they don't have to wake up so early and spend preparing anymore, it's free time to sleep or to use however they wish. Um, about work and life balance, we see that allowing employees to work from home increases of course, the amount of time that they can spend with their family or alone time. Alone time is important too. So there's a significant improvement in quality of life, and of course, a huge decrease in stress. As for financial savings, a lot of money is spent on commuting and on food expenses, or people have to eat out a lot of the time when they have to commute to an office. We see reduction in daily expenses, in childcare, in wardrobe costs, also, exactly. Uh, Actually, people, yeah, spend less money, spend less time. People have more time, people spend less money. I apologize. And people also have an improved health and wellness. Why? Because that time that they have as a surplus and that decrease in stress allows people to spend more time exercising, doing fitness, eating better, sleeping better. And that also, we also see that there's a reduction, a 71% actually, reduction in sick days taken. So that is a huge, huge, huge benefits for employees. But what about for the employer? Oh, sorry. Yeah, this was I wanted to provide an image. So imagine, both of these images are a lemon tree. I want you to imagine that you are the lemon tree here on the left. You are indoors. You are planted in a tight, small pot with limited resources, limited soil. You have to be under unnatural lights the whole day and strange sounds. How productive do you think this lemon tree can really be at the end of the day compared to it being planted outside with more access to resources, fresh air, the freedom to spread its branches? So that is a visual image for you as for the benefits for the employees. Now, for the benefits for the organizations themselves, we also see four main benefits. We see cost savings, a general reduction, a reduction in general costs, in real estate costs, and utility costs. We see an increase in productivity and in performance because people are less absent, people are more productive. There's also a lot less turnover, and it's much easier and faster to hire for remote positions. We also see companies have more talent access. They have a wider access to a talent pool because it's not just limited to local people. When hiring, you can hire from anywhere in the world. And that is a huge, huge, huge benefit. Another thing we see is the global impact of remote work. We see that there's a huge reduction in paper waste. We see a boost to local economies, a lower carbon footprint. So basically, in a nutshell, It's a win-win-win. Win for the employee, win for the employer, and a win for the environment. So what is the current state of workplace flexibility today in 2024? What we see is that more than a full remote model, as we saw during the pandemic, more than the full remote model, we see that hybrid is becoming the norm. Companies, organizations are becoming a little bit more flexible and adjusting their models based on their needs, their distribution of their workforce, their productivity goals, etc. But at the same time, we do see a growth, an increase in remote-first companies because organizations realized that not every single industry, not every single job needs to be performed in an office. For example, industries and jobs that do not need a physical office presence or a face-to-face interaction with clients, for example. By going fully remote, there's that much cost that can be saved for the organization. So we do see a growth in remote-first companies. And another thing that we are seeing today is there's more flexibility beyond just location in terms of hybrid. There's more flexible hours, more inclusive schedules, and more compressed work weeks. For example, I'm sure you've heard of the 4-day work week. That is also an example of companies providing more flexible options beyond just location. And why is that? Well, during the pandemic, everyone went pretty much full remote. So the most flexible side of the flexibility spectrum that we saw a few slides ago. And employees today, even after the pandemic, now see that flexible options are more of an essential rather than a perk. And they kind of demand that of their organizations. And they also search for that option when job hunting. So because of this, when after the pandemic, companies started to want to come back to the office and push the return to office initiatives, these companies faced a lot of criticism, a lot of pushback, and it has not been easy for companies to return to the normal that they were used to, which was fully in office. So that has caused a lot of governments and regulatory bodies all over the world, actually, to implement new policies, new labor laws, to allow the employee to have the freedom to ask, to have the right to ask the employer to provide flexible or remote work arrangements. And now the employer has to answer, and they have to give a valid reason. In some countries, they have also a time limit to give a valid reason for refusal. So that is the current state of remote work in 2024. For example, on this graph, we see, this is on a global level, we see that up to 97% of people who are looking for a job, they're looking for either fully remote or hybrid options. So some workplace flexibility, 97%. That is a number we cannot simply just ignore anymore. And another thing is, okay, for example, work location flexibility in US companies over time. Pre-COVID, we saw that only about 25% of employers in the US provided flexible options, work options to their employees. From pre-COVID era to early 2023, we saw a big increase in workplace flexibility in the US. But today in 2024, even after the pandemic is over, we do still see a big increase. So what I'm trying to say, and what I need you to understand, is that remote work is not over and done with. It is it is changing shapes. It is becoming a more flexible work, more than fully remote. And it is growing. It is coming to pretty much all businesses. So if you haven't yet implemented a flexible remote or hybrid work model at your organization, at your team, you should be considering that. That now is the time to be considering that. But there are challenges. I'm sure you've heard there's a lot of concerns, anxiety regarding going remote. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of organizations who have tried remote models and have had some issues. So let's talk about them. The first and biggest one, the biggest issue, is with team collaboration and communication. This is the biggest issue we see with pretty much all teams, because the main reason for this is that it's a huge change, especially during the pandemic. It was a huge change between having that face-to-face interaction at the office every single day and being able to see who is at the desk, who is busy, who is working, and who is slacking off, who is available for a little informal conversation. So all of that was lost when people started working remotely. And also, what happened was that because of the amount of tools that people have to implement when working remotely, for example, Zoom or chat tools, video tools, email tools, people get tool fatigued, or on the contrary, they get too dependent on tools. That also creates room for miscommunications and conflicts and isolation as well. And also, of course, time zone differences for teams that have people working from different countries, for example, or even in the same country with different time zones. But another thing that becomes an issue is when people working remotely, not everyone has access to the same resources, to the same IT literacy level, for example. So that can also create conflicts, isolation, lack of visibility. So the way we can overcome or prevent these issues is by, first of all, defining communication channels. For this type of communication, we use this tool, or we do it like this. We have some defined rules and channels to prevent this. And of course, regular check-ins are also necessary, because the amount of times that you're used to seeing your coworkers, your team members face to face at the office, you need to kind of compensate, a little bit overcompensate when going remote. So you do need to check in on everyone. Issue number 2 is performance monitoring and productivity monitoring. Because as I mentioned earlier, we cannot see people anymore. When someone's working remote, you might be at the office, but if someone is working from home, you don't know what they're doing. You don't know if they're working seriously, if they're currently on a phone call and busy and cannot answer your email, for example. And this happens usually because organizations are more used to tracking metrics, as in they track how long an employee has worked, or as we saw on the previous slide, they track the visibility. What are they doing? Do they look like they're working or not? So this tracking metrics over the actual productivity of the user can create issues. So setting clear goals, using productivity tools, and most importantly, creating feedback loops. You do need to have a feedback loop to notice any issues as soon as they occur, and also to be ready to create improvements to overcome this. Issue number 3 that we see is with company culture. I'm sure we're all very used to listening to this company culture. pizza, or what was it? A thank you bag, a thank you bag every 2 years. But a company culture is really a big thing, and it is really important. And having a cohesive company culture is difficult when everyone is not in the same physical space together all of the time. There's less informal interactions, which are so important and usually very underestimated, but should not be underestimated. There's more isolation, as we've seen in the previous slides. And so, how we can overcome or prevent this, if you're just getting started in your remote journey, is implementing virtual events. Do not underestimate the power of virtual events. Just turning on the camera, seeing people, having like a fun little game night on Fridays, for example, is should not be underestimated and has a huge effect on the company culture, even when people are working remotely. Also, creating a clear communication of values, company values, team values, project missions, for example, should also be very clear, should also keep being very clear, even especially when working remotely. Also, it is helpful if you do have employee recognition systems in place. The last challenge we see with some companies, not all, it also depends on the industry, IT security and data protection concerns. We do see some of them with some people concerned with data vulnerabilities, device management. This can also be solved with regular security training for the management and for the regular employee that will be working remotely. And introduction or implementation of things like two-factor authentication, for example. These are just examples. This is not by any means an extensive list. So with all these challenges, and they are not small challenges, they're pretty big and cannot be ignored, of course. But with all these challenges, there are success stories. So let's talk about them a little bit. The first success story that I would like to introduce is the huge multinational consumer goods company Unilever. Everybody's heard of Unilever. Everybody has Unilever products in their refrigerator right now. Go look after the presentation. Not now. But so Unilever, a huge enterprise, they implemented a hybrid work model focused on the more flexible side, as in the employees can choose when they would like to take their hybrid days. They have more autonomy. And what Unilever saw by implementing this hybrid model was a higher productivity from the employees, increased job satisfaction levels, and a reduced carbon footprint. So what strategies they decided to implement for this was, for example, number one, future of work initiative. One of the strategies that they decided to create was to give the employees the option to choose when and how they would work remotely. But they did, the structure that they said was that it was a maximum of 2 days per week. But other than that, the employees could choose. And that freedom, that autonomy really was huge in the results that they saw. Another thing is that Unilever already had their sustainability goals, and implementing hybrid work helped them reach their sustainability mission, which not only was good for the organization, but also making employees feel that they're reaping the benefits of a hybrid work model. But not only that, they're helping the company reach their sustainability mission. So everybody is involved in this process. So that was actually a really, really good strategy that they decided to implement. Another thing, and really important actually, was the training for virtual management, because we do realize that, and they did realize as well, that managing teams on site and managing teams remotely is hugely different. So they, first of all, they prepared training for their managers on how to train your team remotely and how to engage your team members effectively. And that was a huge part in their positive outcome. And now you might be thinking, yeah, well, sure. Unilever is a huge enterprise. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of money. They can afford to try to go remote and maybe fail, maybe succeed, but it's not fair because they're a huge enterprise. Of course, they can succeed eventually. That's what you might be thinking. And to you, I would like to introduce then the next slide, a mid-size company case. A little smaller, but still well-known company, Aflac Insurance, a very well-known health and supplemental insurance company. In their case, they were also very successful, and they implemented a flexible remote model, but specifically not for everyone, specifically for their customer service and corporate teams. And what they saw with this was that there were reduced waiting times, enhanced customer service quality, therefore an increase in customer satisfaction and a reduction in employee turnover. Because if the customer is more satisfied, that is less yelling at that the employees get when doing customer service. That is a huge thing to consider. About the strategies that they used for this implementation of a flexible remote model, they transitioned the customer support with upgraded call center technology. So to make up to make sure that the call center staff had all the tools that they needed to perform their duties, their customer service, and their duties from a remote location. They also provided home office setup stipends. For example, I do not have the data right here, but they did have, for example, stipends for the internet costs that the employees had. And for example, for tools like ergonomic chairs, mouse, screens, and headsets. And also they implemented wellness programs to support employees' mental health. That was also a really big strategy. And also, as we saw with Unilever, they've also, at Aflac Insurance, they've also developed virtual training and coaching to keep their remote teams up to date with the best practices and industry regulations. And now you might be thinking, but Sofia, Aflac Insurance is still a pretty big company. You know, my company or my team is not that big. We don't have access to those resources. We cannot have the same experience. So I see you. And I introduced to you the small business success story of Learning Lab, a small a small educational content development company based in Singapore that introduced the flexible model for all of their employees. And as a result, they saw an expanded market reach. Because they had access to more talent, their team became more diverse, and as a result, they had a higher quality in their delivered products, their educational content and services as well. They also offered, as a strategy, they also offered virtual training. So we've seen this in all three examples of success. Training is important. Coaching is important on how to implement their materials successfully, how to communicate successfully while remote. So what I want to say is that you can do it too. If Unilever can do it, if Aflac Insurance can do it, and if Learning Lab in Singapore can do it, you can do it too. Everybody can do it. But before you actually do it, I want you to think if you should or not, and if you're ready to or not. So let's look at that next. So Before you actually go remote, you should run what I call the ABCDs, running the ABCDs. A for assessing your organization and your team. B for building a goal-aligned strategy. C for actually carrying out a seamless transition. And D for developing strategies for long-lasting success. So how do you run the ABCDs? With assessing, with A over here, you assess what actual jobs at your company can be done remotely. If your employees are ready or not to do so, and if they have the necessary resources to do so. You also assess your technology. Do you have everything you need for your team and your employees and you yourself to perform your work from outside of the office successfully? After you assess which tasks can be done remotely and if you're ready to do so, you start building your goal-aligned strategy. You cannot just go cold turkey. You need to make a strategy first. You need to create objectives, but you need to keep it flexible at the same time. You need to prepare first how you're going to communicate and collaborate with your team, how you're going to train and support your team, how are you going to be tracking their performance, their productivity. You need to prepare these things in advance, build these things in advance before going over to C, actually carrying out the transition. So with carrying out the transition, the key point is to do it small. Start small. Think big, but start small. For example, the best way to do so, in my opinion, and as we've seen with a lot of success stories, is that they started with a pilot program. They selected a small team to implement the transition and gradually scale it. Listen to the feedback. Allocate the resources to make this small team, this small pilot program first successful, and gather as much feedback and resources and from the pilot program as possible in order to then be able to go over to D, developing strategies for lasting success. So with the gathered feedback from the pilot program, you do performance reviews, you update, you adjust to the team, and you improve. You start to make improvements, and you support your team to you reassess and you build again. So this needs to be always running. This is not a one-time thing. This needs to be always running. You assess, you build, you carry out, you develop, and then you reassess, you rebuild, you carry out again. This is my suggested transition framework. And now you might be thinking, well, this is too complicated, and what should I do exactly? I'm not sure. So to you, I've prepared a free checklist. I invite you to check try.roomth.app/blog/checklist. I've prepared a checklist for all points for A, B, C, and D that you can follow along with some examples as well that you can hopefully find helpful in your transition journey. Now, for some tools that you should be looking into, tools and features that you should be looking into when transitioning, you mainly need 4. First of all, communication tools to communicate with your team and for them to communicate with each other. Then you should be looking into project management tools. How will you track your goals, your progress? Collaboration tools for the team to collaborate with each other, work in sync and async as well, and also for productivity tracking and result tracking. So a few of the features for each. For communication tools, you'll be looking at features like instant messaging, video calls, file sharing, team channels, secure communication, for example. For project management, you will be looking at task assignments, real-time project updates, timelines, deadlines are some of the things you should be looking into. About collaboration tools, screen sharing, for example, real-time collaboration, document collaboration, and visual collaboration, also for brainstorming. That is really, really useful. And for productivity tracking, tracking the amount of hours that the employee worked is also important, yes, but also to track the productivity goals to help identify trends so that you can more effectively run the ABCDs that we mentioned in the previous slide. But then looking at this, I'm sure if you look at the examples I've posted for each category of tool, you don't exactly find that one tool is in more than one category. So that is where Roomth comes in. So Roomth is the all-in-one virtual workspace for teams of all sizes. It has communication tools, it has management tools, it has collaboration tools, and it has tracking tools. But the biggest point in Roomth is that we focus on visibility, making employees visible, making your team visible. What is everyone doing and what? Are they busy? Are they taking a break? Are they on a phone call? So it's bringing your office to the metaverse. You have your workspace, you have your table, you can communicate, you can collaborate, you can file share, you can have video calls, instant messaging. And you can also, for the tracking, you can track work hours, you can help identify trends, you can screen share, you can also solve things that usually with remote, one of the issues we see is that meetings could have been an email and emails could have been a 5-second talk. So with other remote tools, what is not possible, we can make it possible with Roomth. So what I hope you got from today, the main 4 points that I wished to tell you, and I hope you understand with today's presentation, is that first of all, if you want to go remote with your team, you need to choose a setup or a model that works for you personally, for you and your team. What worked for someone else might not work for you, and what didn't work for someone else might work for you. So you need to tailor your remote experience to you and your team specifically. Secondly, I hope you understood that planning and gathering your tools in advance will be the key, and starting small and simple also for long-term success. And after you've actually implemented this flexible model at your work, you need to keep it flexible and keep adjusting. It's not a one-time thing. You need to keep running those ABCDs in order to make sure that your success story will continue to be a success story. If you do these, if you take this into account, I promise that your remote work transition will be amazing. I promise. And of course, you can connect with me if you'd like, both through my email, sofia@roomth.app, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can ask me anything about Roomth. If you're interested in trying Roomth, I can give you a demo. Or if you have any questions about your remote work journey, if you're having any issues, or if you still are anxious about trying remote work, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to help you out with any questions you might have. Okay, so now let's go over to our Q&A time. Let's see the questions that we got in the chat. Thank you so much for all the questions, by the way. And that is it for day one of the Mastering Remote Work in 2025 webinar series. I hope you got some insight. I hope some of your questions were cleared, and I hope that was useful for you. And thank you so much again for making time to come join me today. And I hope to see you tomorrow for day 2, where we will be looking at why some people's remote work experience is not as great as it should be and how we can improve that. Thank you so much. I hope you can join me again tomorrow.